This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Winter Wallop, good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast.
This is going to be a big impact storm.
Meteorologist Al Roker tracking this storm, which spans 2/3 of the country.
We're talking 2,000 miles, a stretch of heavy snow.
Ice and cold will also be a problem. 200 million of us in 35 states in the path of this monster. It'll start to impact us Saturday night into Sunday.
This delivers everything, a snow component and a crippling ice storm. It all begins tomorrow morning, and then it will continue to just go downhill. We're looking at about a 30-hour event once this starts in your neighborhood.
Meteorologist Britta Merwin says the bitter cold is a key factor in this multi-day, multi-state weather event.
The cold air behind this storm is going to be a kicker. It means that the ice and snow will stick around for a prolonged amount of time, but also the power outages will as well.
Daytime highs will be -3 tomorrow in Chicago. Wind chills of 40 below are possible for some of us this weekend, with a foot of snow in many spots across New York and Pennsylvania. It's an impact everyone kind of storm, and Kevin Williams is following it in his forecast on the way. President Trump introduced his new Board of Peace for the Middle East today during a meeting with European leaders in Davos, Switzerland.
This board has the chance to be one of the most consequential bodies ever created, and it's my enormous honor to serve as its chairman.
Over 24 countries have pledged to help rebuild Gaza now that the war between Israel and Hamas is over with, at least on paper. Aaron McLean at the Hudson Institute says job number one for the Board of Peace is
the disarmament of Hamas, which is still there, still armed. The president is very clear-eyed about this and has said repeatedly they are going to disarm, and I believe his exact words were, if they don't, they're going to be, quote, blown away. So this Board of Peace is sort of the steps 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 after that first and second step of disarmament.
McLean describes the Board of Peace as a 2026 version of the United Nations for the Middle East. Arkansas Republican Tom Cotton chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Nothing can happen in Gaza. People of Gaza can't have a better future. The people of Israel can't live in safety unless Hamas is totally disarmed. Once Hamas is totally disarmed, then the members of this board may be able to look to the future of Gaza and try to help the people there build a better future. But you have to start with the disarming of Hamas.
The Board of Peace was approved by the UN Security Council and will oversee the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. While in Switzerland today, Mr. Trump also met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. They talked about ways to wind down the war with Russia. White House peace envoy Steve Witkoff.
We've got it down to one issue, and we have discussed iterations of that issue, and that means it's solvable.
Next month marks the 4-year anniversary of the Russian-Ukraine war, the largest and deadliest war in Europe since World War II. President Trump is backing away from threats to seize Greenland after reaching a deal with NATO. The BBC's Graham Satchell.
We don't yet know the details of this deal, but it appears to involve a significant ramping up of security in and around Greenland. NATO says it's determined Russia and China will never gain a foothold there. In other words, it's what President Trump wanted from the start.
President Trump says the breakthrough deal with NATO is enough to hold off any tariffs that he'd planned to impose on European nations that opposed his takeover of Greenland. Vice President J.D. Vance gives a law and order speech today in Minneapolis amid rising tensions with federal immigration enforcement efforts there. 10,000 arrests have been made since ICE arrived in the Twin Cities. The fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good has sparked sparked days of protests in the land of 10,000 lakes. Former special counsel Jack Smith testifying today before the House Judiciary Committee about his investigations into the president. Smith led the probe into Trump's involvement or alleged involvement in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, as well as alleged mishandling of classified documents. Mr. Smith has been accused by Republicans of weaponizing the Justice Department for political purposes. A former Uvalde, Texas school resource officer was acquitted last night of criminal charges for his role in the Robb Elementary School massacre in 2022.
The state failed to convince the jury that Adrian Gonzalez was to blame for law enforcement taking 77 minutes to breach the classroom and take down the 18-year-old gunman who killed 19 students and 2 teachers.
After 6 hours of deliberations, that jury found Gonzalez not guilty of failing to respond in a prompt manner to the mass shooting. This year's Oscar nods are out. The film Sinners leading the way with a record 16 nominations. Conan O'Brien will host the 98th Academy Award show on Sunday night, March 15th on ABC. And still to come on the Noon Report for Thursday, controversial redistricting in New York. What's going on at One Bills Drive and getting paid to go to school. High school. We'll have the story after this.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. It is a wintry weather story for us moving forward. I'll have the latest forecast in 10.
All right, Kevin. We'll be sure to stick around for that. Experts are warning about the importance of winterizing your automobile with a polar vortex about to send our temperatures tumbling.
Officials with AAA say the best thing to prepare your car for rough weather is to check your battery. Cold weather can make it harder for your battery to start your car. They're also reminding people to check your oil, taillights, headlights, wiper fluid, tire pressure, and tire treads before the storm. But also what's inside your car is important. Having an emergency kit with a flashlight, warm clothes, water, phone chargers, batteries, and salt can help you in the event you get stuck on the road in bad weather. I'm Rosia Rivera.
All right, some good advice there. Thank you. Binghamton University in New York Southern Tier will soon become the first public university in the country to have an independent artificial intelligence research center. The school's getting $55 million to build the Center for AI Responsibility and Research. Most of that money is in the form of donations from BU alumni, the state's chipping in the rest. New York Governor Kathy Hochul wants a 5-year extension on tax credits to help the state's struggling dairy industry.
It gives more certainty to farmers, allows them time to strategically plan their investments and get them done over the next several years instead of in the next year or so.
That's Allison Jones-Brimmer, Executive Director of the Northeast Dairy Producers Association.
There are forces beyond farmers' control happening that are impacting the price that they're getting paid for their products.
Included in the governor's $260 billion budget proposal is $30 million to help New York farmers who are negatively impacted by the president's tariff policy. Republican Assemblyman Chris Tague calls the governor's move political and vague.
This is the whole problem. We don't know who is and who isn't struggling from the tariffs and what is causing the struggling from the tariffs. That's the problem with the governor. This was just political nonsense.
The budget is due April 1st. Let's see if they can meet the deadline. Last year's spending plan was the latest in 15 years. A multi-alarm fire damaged a Northwest Pennsylvania manufacturing facility last night. We get details on that from Family Life's Mark Webster.
Yeah, at least 100 firefighters braved the cold to fight huge flames at the Hensa stamping plant in Corey, PA. The first alarm rang around 4:15 p.m. Wednesday. Firefighters from Erie and surrounding counties were still on the scene into the evening trying to bring the blaze under control. 2 people inside when the fire broke out got out safely and were treated for minor smoke inhalation. Smoke and flames were visible miles away. Later, much of the building collapsed. Hensa has been doing metal stamping work for various industries for 40 years. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you, Mark. New York will have to redraw a key congressional district ahead of November's midterm elections. It's the 11th district, represented by Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. That district is the only Republican district in all of New York City. The proposed changes will likely make the path to re-election much more difficult for Congresswoman Malliotakis. A new map shows where measles cases are popping up in Pennsylvania. The disease is making a comeback, and the risk is great in the northern tier and parts of north central and northeastern PA, based on childhood vaccination rates.
It's a reflection of a broader trend of more skepticism, fear, anxiety around vaccines.
That's Dr. Evan Shirey, an infectious disease expert. He says there were over 2,000 cases of the measles in Pennsylvania last year. The highly contagious disease was once thought eradicated in these United States. New York's second largest school district, the Buffalo School District, has just announced a new student attendance lottery. $1,000 a month will be awarded to 3 lucky students who miss 1 day of school or less each month. The superintendent will randomly select 3 students each month from the 60 or so schools that make up the Buffalo School District. $28 million in unused gift cards was recovered last year in New York. Comptroller Tom DiNapoli says if a card goes unused for 5 years, retailers are required by law to give that money back to the state, and that gives you a chance to get your money back in your pocketbook.
The real message is if you get a gift card, don't wait too long. Use it within a few months or certainly within the first year, and certainly the first thing you should do is register the gift card.
DiNapoli says if a gift card is not registered, it is a lot harder to get that money back to you. 2025 was a record year for gambling in Pennsylvania. The Gaming Control Board says nearly $7 billion with a B dollars in gambling revenue was raked in last year. That's a more than 10% increase from 2024. Pro-family groups fear sports betting in particular is creating an entire new generation of gambling addicts in the Commonwealth. Buffalo Bills owner Terry Pegula promises that quarterback Josh Allen will be a part of the new coach selection process after the firing this week of Sean McDermott, who coached for 9 years in Western New York. Pegula talked to the press on Wednesday about his rationale for letting McDermott go.
What is success? Is success being in the playoffs 7 years in a row with no Super Bowl appearance?
Pegula says he knew he had to make a change after walking into the locker room following the Bills' devastating overtime loss to Denver in the playoffs last Saturday.
I saw the pain in Josh's face at his presser, and I felt his pain. I felt like we hit the proverbial playoff wall.
Pegula says it is not Super Bowl or bust for whomever will succeed McDermott as the Bills' new head coach. Potential replacements include former Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll and the current offensive coordinator Joe Brady. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the sports news from yesterday, more about individuals than actual games. The biggest news is out of Buffalo, and it's Josh Allen's foot. He may need to have surgery on it, but if he does, the Bills are saying he will be good to go for next season. Staying in Buffalo, but switching sports, the Sabres believe they have their next superstar. They signed Josh Doan to a 7-year deal for $7 million a season. Doan has 15 goals and 20 assists in his first season with the franchise. Now it's baseball. The Yankees are bringing back an important piece of their offense and defense, for that matter. Cody Bellinger inked a 5-year contract with the Bronx Bombers. And across town, the Mets keep on wheeling and dealing. They swung a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers, getting 2-time All-Star Freddie Peralta for 2 prospects. Peralta went 17-6 last season with a sparkling 2.7 ERA. All right, now to action at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks not only ended their 4-game losing streak, They had their most lopsided victory ever, winning by 54 points over the Brooklyn Nets, 120-66. Jalen Brunson had 20 to lead the New Yorkers. The Cavs, Celtics, Hawks, Pistons, Thunder, and Raptors also picked up wins. On the ice, Tommy Novak and Evgeny Malkin both had a goal and an assist to lead the Penguins over the Flames 4-1. The Flyers lost a tough one to the Mammoth. Utah's Clayton Keller scored with 34 seconds left to send the game into overtime, and then he followed with the game winner 2 minutes into the OT period. The Flyers blew a 3-goal lead, falling 5-4. Detroit, Anaheim, Seattle, and Vancouver also skated to victories. That is a look at sports.
Thank you kindly, Randy. And still to come on the Noon Report, President Trump's Board of Peace, Kevin Williams tracking the storm, and Sarah Harnish talking boys in girls' sports. After this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, critics often argue that much of what Christians think of as biblical truth and morality today are mere inventions of late 20th century American conservatism. So, Christian sexual ethics, they're products of 1990s purity culture. Claims about the exclusivity of Christ, those are remnants of Western ideological imperialism. And of course, the pro-life movement, that was invented by Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson to get Ronald Reagan in office in the 80s. However, the first Christians were known and often attacked for many of the same beliefs and same practices that Christians are today, just without the lions. In fact, just like the creeds of the early church clarified what Christians should believe, there are other writings from that time that clarify how Christians should live. For example, Justin Martyr's beautiful description of the Christian worship service would fit what most of us still experience each Sunday today. Quote, "On the day called Sunday, all who live in cities or in the country gather together in one place, and the memoirs of the apostles or the writings of the prophets are read, as long as time permits. Then, when the reader has ceased, the president verbally instructs and exhorts the imitation of these good things. Then we all rise together and pray. And as we before said, when our prayer is ended, bread and wine and water are brought, and the president, in like manner, offers prayers and thanksgivings according to his ability, and the people assent, saying, Amen." And then there's the Epistle to Diognetus, written by a Christian to a non-believing friend in the 2nd or 3rd century. He described the Christian's way of life this way, quote, "Christians dwell in their own countries, but simply as sojourners. As citizens, they share in all things with others, and yet endure all things as if foreigners. Every foreign land is to them as their native country. Every land of their birth is a land of strangers. They marry, as do all others. They beget children, but they do not destroy their offspring. They have a common table, but not a common bed." End quote. And probably the clearest example of this early teaching is the Didache, a 2nd century summary of Christian morality. It commanded the church, among many other things, basically to be pro-life. Quote, "You shall not murder a child by abortion, nor kill that which is born." End quote. And this command and the fact that the early church lived by it is a key reason for the explosive growth the early church experienced. You see, in the ancient Greco-Roman world, abortion and the killing of infants through a practice called exposure was considered both legally and socially acceptable, and most of the babies that were left to die were little girls. In his book, The Rise of Christianity, Rodney Stark described how Christians would search out and save these little girls that had been left to die by their pagan families. After a few decades of this kind of life and death dynamic, there was a shortage of women within pagan culture for pagan young men to marry. So many of them, believe it or not, ended up going to church so that they could find wives. Also, because Christian women did not have abortions at the same rates as pagan women, a particularly brutal practice at the time, they also had higher fertility rates. So in the end, the explosive growth of Christianity across the empire was really about math. God used the obedience of early Christians to change the world. Now, of course, if we could take a time machine today and go back and speak to any of these baby rescuers and ask if they realized just how significant their obedience was going to be in the history of mankind, my guess is they'd be puzzled. Well, I don't know anything about that. They'd probably say, I'm just trying to help her. And that's why the Christian life can never be reduced down to just random acts of kindness. God orchestrates history, and among the things he uses most is the obedience of his people. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Let's pause, take it outside. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast. Variable clouds and still lake effect snow showers around a couple inches in the snow belts. Temperatures have peaked, will hold steady or drop slightly as the afternoon wears on. Then much colder tonight and tomorrow. Patchy clouds and flurries. Heavier lake snow east of Lake Ontario. Temperatures tonight dropping toward 10, ultimately into the single digits tomorrow with wind chills dropping below 0. Saturday will be a bone-chillingly cold day. High temperatures single digits to around 10. And then region-wide heavy snow expected on Sunday.
All right, thank you, Kevin. And folks, get ready. It's coming, as Kevin alluded to, a blockbuster storm on the way. 200 million Americans in 35 states are in the path of this monster. Forecaster Lonnie Quinn.
Snowfall could be up to a foot or more, and as that storm transitions into the northeast by Sunday into Monday, portions of the northeast could be seeing a foot or more of some snow. So the timing, Oklahoma and Texas, Friday, you're dealing with the storm. Make your preps tomorrow. The mid-Atlantic, the southeast, you're going to be dealing with this on Saturday, and Sunday it is into the northeast.
Wind chills of 40 below are possible this weekend, along with a lot of ice south of I-80 in Pennsylvania. And it is the ice that most concerns meteorologist Al Roker.
This is where we could see major problems as far as trees coming down, air travel delays, dangerous roads, power outages that could last for several days.
Widespread power outages, not just a possibility, but expected this weekend in the Northeast. President Trump today introduced a new board of peace for the Middle East. More than 24 nations pledging to assist in the rebuilding of Gaza now that the war between Israel and Hamas has ended. President Trump says job number one for this board is to ensure that Hamas disarms.
If Hamas doesn't do what they promised they would do, and I think they probably will, but they were born with rifles in their hands, but they have to give up their weapons, and if they don't do that, it's going to be the end of them.
In a controversial move, the commander-in-chief invited Russia to sit on this board. Bad idea, says former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman.
Bringing Russia in, I think, is inherently difficult because Russia is responsible for the most destructive land war in Europe since the Second World War.
President Trump met on the sidelines today of a global summit in Switzerland with Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky. Next month will mark 4 years since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The White House says there's a deal in place with Europe regarding our interests in Greenland.
The president said the breakthrough came after a meeting with the head of NATO. Trump posting he will not be imposing the tariffs on Denmark, which controls the island, and 7 other European nations. He also vowed not to use the military to capture Greenland.
Correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Vice President Vance paying a visit to Minneapolis today amid ongoing tensions with immigration enforcement efforts there. The VP expected to meet with local leaders and community members and be a part of a roundtable discussion. Minneapolis has been in the spotlight for weeks now, ever since the fatal ice-involved shooting of a 37-year-old mother. After 6 hours of deliberations, a jury has acquitted a former Uvalde, Texas school resource officer. He was on duty the day of the Robb Elementary School massacre in 2022. Brett Cross lost his 10-year-old son in that shooting.
You know, it's just another slap in the face. It's been like that for the past almost 4 years, just slap in the face after slap in the face.
Officer Adrian Gonzalez was found not guilty of failing to protect students during the mass shooting that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. The special prosecutor who brought federal indictments against President Trump testifying today before the House Judiciary Committee. Jack Smith investigated Mr. Trump for having classified documents at his Florida mansion and for allegedly trying to overturn the 2020 election results. GOP lawmakers claim Smith weaponized the Justice Department for political purposes. A House committee has advanced a resolution to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress. Here's reporter Nicole Killian.
9 Democrats joined Republicans to back the resolution for former President Bill Clinton, while only 3 Democrats supported the resolution for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. House Oversight Chair James Comer said the votes were warranted arrested after the former first couple defied a congressional subpoena to testify about the Jeffrey Epstein case. A full House vote is expected next month.
And a new study from the navigation company TomTom reveals the cities in America with the worst traffic. Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
Let's be honest, nobody likes being stuck in traffic, especially rush hour bumper-to-bumper traffic, where there's no end in sight. At the top of the list in the U.S. are cities that are probably no surprise. New York City drivers lose an average of 125 hours, or a little over 5 days, stuck in traffic every year. It's also the city with the slowest average speed in the country, 11.8 miles per hour. Also atop the list, San Francisco, Honolulu, and Los Angeles. Philadelphia ranked 8th on the list, and Pittsburgh ranked 13th. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. You're tuned in to the Noon Report, a Thursday edition on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm news anchor Sarah Harnish. With me today, Alliance Defending Freedom Senior Counsel Matt Sharp. We're talking transgender sports. 2 states defended their laws that protect girls' sports before the U.S. Supreme Court this month, Idaho and West Virginia. Alliance Defending Freedom co-counseled in both of those cases. Tell me what happened in West Virginia versus BPJ and Little versus Hecox.
Both of these cases involve state laws that ensure men cannot take away spots on the team or championships from female athletes, basically setting an eligibility rule that men cannot compete in women's sports. Well, shortly after these laws were passed, the ACLU challenged them, arguing that they were unconstitutional or violated Title IX. Those cases made their way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where ADF was honored to stand with Idaho and West Virginia to defend these laws, to defend fairness in women's sports, and to ensure that young women in these states never need to fear losing out on equal opportunities in sports to male athletes.
27 states have laws on the books that protect girls. CBS News is reporting it looks positive for girls' rights, and that would be a massive blow to the transgender movement. Give me a play-by-play of what happened in the courtroom in favor of female athletes.
Well, we saw very early on some great questioning from the justices, getting to the heart of the flaws in the ACLU's logic and arguments in this case. For example, there was a great exchange where Justice Alito was pushing the ACLU to acknowledge states can have separate teams for men and women. Justice Alito then pushed further and say, well, don't you need to have a proper definition of sex and male and female to be able to apply and enforce those policies? And that's where the ACLU stumbled and said, we can't provide that definition for you today. That's part of the problem of their argument. They are trying to redefine sex, what we know to be male and female based on biology, to embrace this concept of gender identity, that your subjective sense of self, how you identify, is what you are rather than your biology. But we know in sports it's biology that matters, and that's why we were encouraged to see the court go back to this line of questioning, go back to those physiological differences between men and women, and why those differences matter in sports, and therefore states can step in, pass laws to make sure that women's sporting opportunities are not lost out to male athletes.
Justice Kavanaugh said, quote, the growth of girls' sports the last 50 years is inspiring. Allowing transgender students to participate will reverse that success. That is a strong statement in your favor. What's your reaction?
Justice Kavanaugh was absolutely right, and we need to look no further than the stories that emerge from young women that have lost out on opportunities because of male athletes. For example, in our Connecticut case, where we're representing several female athletes challenging bad policies, 2 male athletes captured 16 championships, dozens of medals and other opportunities and records, and over 90 instances where those 2 male athletes took away opportunities to advance in competition or get on a spot on the podium from young women. It's even worse in West Virginia, where a single male athlete displaced over 400 young women in sports, and over 1,000 times where that male athlete took an opportunity away from a young woman. We see how even just 1 or 2 males being allowed to compete in women's sports has a devastating impact on women's opportunities. But it goes beyond the playing field, because not only does it impact your spot on a team or your spot on a podium, but this same principle is resulting in men going into women's locker rooms and restrooms where these young women are being sexually harassed by males. That's a tragedy. It should never happen. And that's why we have to make sure that we protect women's sports, protect women's privacy, and ultimately reaffirm the truth that we are created male and female.
Most Supreme Court rulings are handed down in June. If the justices side with Idaho and West Virginia, what would happen next?
Well, the immediate outcome would be that both the Idaho and West Virginia laws and those of the 25 other states that have also passed similar Save Women's Sports laws would be upheld, allowed to go into effect. And that's going to be a huge win for hundreds of thousands of female athletes that now know that their spot on the team, their place on the podium, their access to sporting scholarships is secure and not at threat of a male coming along and taking those away. But I think we have to look forward to the next step. We still have 23 other states that don't have Save Women's Sports laws, some of which have bad policies that allow men on women's teams. And that's why Alliance Defending Freedom is going to continue to bring these cases, like our case in Connecticut, like our case in Minnesota, where we are challenging the bad policies. And we're hearing more and more women speaking out on this issue, boldly saying we are not going to allow our opportunities to be taken away. So I'm not only encouraged by what I saw in the courtroom, but I'm even more encouraged by what we're seeing in our culture as more and more voices are speaking out. And I think that's ultimately how we're going to get lasting, permanent change to put gender ideology to rest and to secure fairness in women's sports for generations to come.
Learn more at adflegal.org.
All right, thank you, Sarah. You can listen to all our Faith Under Fire features online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon to all. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We're in the middle of winter, and the pattern ahead doesn't get much more wintry in our area, with an Arctic assault followed by a winter storm. Here are the details. First, for this afternoon, blustery, variable clouds, sunshine, flurries, and still lake effect snow showers around a couple inches in the snow belts. Temperatures have peaked, will hold steady or drop slightly as the afternoon wears on. Then much, much colder tonight and tomorrow. Patchy clouds and flurries, heavier lake snow east of Lake Ontario, to a lesser extent east of Lake Erie. Temperatures tonight dropping toward 10, ultimately into the single digits tomorrow, with wind chills dropping below zero. Saturday will be a bone-chillingly cold day. We start below zero. We'll have some sunshine, lake effect snow near Lake Ontario. High temperature Saturday, single digits to around 10, and then region-wide heavy snow expected on Sunday.
All right, thank you. Great work, Kevin. And finally, at noon today, a renewed call for the world's most famous groundhog to retire.
It's Punxsutawney Phil!
PETA wants to swap out Pennsylvania's fluffy weather predictor for a state-of-the-art hologram. The animal rights group sent the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club's president a letter suggesting a 3D projection with vocal capabilities.
All right, correspondent Deborah Rodriguez. Not sure how the folks in Punxsutawney would take that. Not too well, I imagine. And that's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, January 22nd. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.